we realise this is a kind of wartime. I think Australia's approach is quite similar to what China has done.
During this pandemic, we've seen acts of discrimination towards Chinese people and towards Asians.
I've heard as many stories about kindly acts between people of different races, different backgrounds. They don't get the same attention as the spectacular stories.
这段时间呢，疫情在澳大利亚的发展也是越来越严重。那为了控制疫情的蔓延呢，从上个月的20号开始，澳大利亚政府就禁止外国人入境，同时呢，也陆续出台了一些措施，比如说关闭公共场所，比如图书馆、公共海滩、酒吧、电影院等等。那面对来势汹汹的疫情，热爱阳光和沙滩的澳大利亚人，他们又准备好了吗？
So we see the number of new cases in Australia going up. How do you evaluate the Australian government's current control and prevention measures? And how are the ordinary Australian people doing?
So the curve is going up very steeply from a low base. The biggest risk, which I think China is also facing, is people coming in from other parts of the world, Australians coming home. No, people are traumatised. I think it's a sense of dread or fear because this is an unknown. We've not known this in our lifetimes, even those who've been alive for a long time. But on the other hand, there's a lot of calm and a lot of goodwill and a lot of good deeds, people looking after each other, looking out for each other. And the government's been very clear in its signals, its messaging, communication. And I think we realise this is a kind of wartime. We have to act as if we are at war with the foreign devil.
Now we see a lot of European countries are following China's decisive control measures recently, right? We've seen a slight shift in their attitude. Do you think that sort of tough controlling and prevention measures, can that be adopted by Australia as well?
Yeah, I think Australia's approach is quite similar to what China has done. I would hope that our government has learned lessons from the Chinese experience. But I think it's been a model effort, a heroic effort by the Chinese government and the Chinese people, for people to sacrifice their liberties so quickly for the greater good. It's a very Chinese characteristic, of course, that the community or society matters. All governments probably should have taken measures sooner on this, and I think we're seeing many governments responding a little late. It's very important we get ahead of the curve, and China can offer many, many good lessons and models about how to do that. China will come out first, and therefore there's a fantastic opportunity for China to lead in a number of ways, not just in health services, emergency, but in terms of how we rebuild a resilient and sustainable global economy.
Now, during this pandemic, we've seen acts of discrimination towards Chinese people and towards Asians. Now, we've seen some unfortunate events happen around the world, in Europe, in the US, in Australia also. What do you think have triggered these events?
Fear and ignorance. Fear and ignorance. I mean, it's not excusable. I mean, nobody should be singled out for such treatment, but unfortunately, there are two types of people in the world more generally. There are those who will stand up in a crisis like this and those who will seek to apportion blame to others. I've heard as many stories about kindly acts between people of different races, different backgrounds. They don't get the same attention as the spectacular stories. This is not the time for blame and shame. This is the time for humanity to be united, and this is a time for people to put down their swords and their angry words and to work together. I think that we need a new language now of dialogue, which is to say, what do we have in common? How do we work to strengthen that?
The next question is about Australian and Chinese cooperation. Now, the Australian economy is very closely related to Chinese demand. So how can Chinese and Australian governments during this time work together to cooperate?
It's a good question because you're right, the interdependency between the two nations is extraordinary. The resources, the hands-off, the iron ore, the liquid natural gas, these things can flow again quite quickly in a remote way. The difficult bit is the human contact. I mean, we can do a lot of things virtually and online. The one thing Chinese business leaders love and Australian business leaders love is long-term loyalty. So let's maintain that. Let's be practical when we can be, but in the meantime, let's communicate like this so we can actually keep systems running. But my intention is, as soon as it's safe to do so, I would like to be in China, and I would like China to take a leading role in the international system about saying, how do we rebuild the global recovery? Let's bring the best brains from around the world, when it's safe to do so, to Beijing to talk about how we rebuild a more resilient and sustainable global system. That's my commitment. I'll be ready as soon as your government says it's safe to do so.